'Cause he believes in the Constitution. And as your assemblyman, he will be your voice. He'll never let you down, make him rejoice. Hallelujah, hallelujah. We finally had a man who hears your voice. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Tim O'Connor is the only choice. Right in, Tim O'Connor, libertarian. For New York State Senate, Senate District 51.
All right, guys, it's a big shout out going out to my buddy Harold Mark Jordan and Hot Vent and the Gideons. Thank you, buddy, for taking the time to do that intro for me. I think it fits me pretty well. I got a kind of a folksy vibe going, and I enjoy the heck out of it, man. So thanks, man. Going out, big, huge thanks going out to you. And guys, as you can see, as I move forward with this campaign, I still like it realistically, right? I'm a write-in candidate for New York State Senate District 51. I need 80,000 votes to win this thing. And that's okay. I don't think I'm going to get them, but the support, the encouragement, the respect for my ideas and people showing up in the lobby when I do these popping off about politics things and the conversations I have every day with people all over the place who realize, guys, they realize that New York State governance is failing, that we are underrepresented, that we are not, the state is in trouble, right? That's real. I mean, we're talking, we took a $6 billion deficit. We responded to COVID, turned it into a $60 billion deficit. School services are being cut. It's a train wreck, guys, and we've got to be ready to stand for each other. We've got to be ready to stand for morals, principles, and doing the right thing by each other. That's why I'm doing this. As you know, guys, success is not final, failure is not fatal, and it's courage, guys. It's courage to continue that counts, and that's where we're at here at September 25th, 2020. And Ryan Bedford, brother, thank you for being in the house, man. It has been a minute or two. It has been. Yes, Shelley, we are not represented, period. Our legislators ceded a bunch of power to Cuomo, but we weren't really represented before that. Let's be honest. Our legislators have become an extension of the bureaucracy. They're basically getting themselves elected to high-paying jobs, and they're not standing on principles that, as near as I can tell it out, when they passed 789 laws in one legislative session, because Cuomo declares legislative emergencies on laws that stifles debate on them. And that is an absolute lack of representation. And while we're talking about representation, I want you guys to know Rand Paul, once again, went to bat for the COVID crisis in New York State. Period. He feels at least someone out there feels like we're not getting the representation that we deserve, that there are solutions, but we have to have questions answered, and no one wants to answer those questions. And all we do is play politics with real issues, like was the COVID crisis handled efficiently? We all know the answer. We've seen the news stories. It's a train wreck. And we look at what's happening to our kids in our schools, and we look at what happened right here in SUNY Oneonta, and guys, no matter what, these things were handled incorrectly. It's easy to criticize. I get that, guys. I really do. And so I want to be fair. There's a system that's been installed in New York State, and that system has in fact become a real problem. So, guys, the likes, the comments, the shares, the questions, those things are what keeps me going. I gave my shout out to Rand Paul. One of the things, guys, that I want to talk about, because it touches on a lot of issues for me personally and for like-minded thinkers who want to discuss how the news manipulates us, how we don't get accurate information, and how a real disaster can point at real solutions. And we get caught up in an us versus them mentality without having a real conversation. So obviously, guys, I think to a lot of you know where I'm heading with that. And I think if we want to talk about Breonna Taylor, I think that every politician, every hopeful politician, and every human being should at least spend a few minutes thinking about this particular situation and what what would be important about moving forward, okay? And how do we move forward after a tragedy like this? And how do we basically expand our understanding of the situation, okay? I see some of my friends want to take one side, and some of my other friends want to take another side, and then people want to make it about racism, and people want to make it about bigotry, and people want to make it about systemic failure, which actually systemic failure I'm pretty comfortable talking about. Okay, as I've said before, and whether it was a no-knock warrant or whether it wasn't a no-knock warrant, that's obviously some sort of a debate. It was apparently a no-knock warrant until the last second, and then it was a knock and announce warrant. But to send a group of guys, young guys, police guys that handle these situations are relatively young guys. I know a lot of them get a lot of training. I know a lot of them care about their communities, and I don't care if this makes some of my more radical libertarian friends disappointed. Okay, these guys are doing a job. Drugs are a dangerous deal. We're going to talk about ending the drug war. We're going to talk about no-knock raids. These things are why, and the reason why we want to expand this concept is because there's a lot of misunderstanding and there's a lot of emotional reacting to it, which, guys, is completely understandable. We don't want to live in a totally lawless society. I may be a libertarian. I want more effective governance. We're steering the Titanic into an iceberg, and all of us are sitting here shuffling deck chairs going, hey, can you just turn the ship, guys? Can we do something about that? So end no-knock raids, definitely ending no-knock raids. Rand Paul, again, put on the floor of the United States legislature, the floor of the Senate, put a bill to end no-knock raids, the Breonna Taylor Act, excuse me. And guys, that would be a big step in the right direction. And why these kind of raids, let's talk about the success of this raid, okay? They didn't find a big pile of cash. They didn't find a big pile of drugs. So the raid itself was unsuccessful. A police officer is being prosecuted for, guys, and look, this is very unfortunate, right? A young man lost his career, period. Okay, he's not going to have a job again, but he did. He fired through a window into an obvious, well, not obvious to him, but a wrong apartment. Plain and simple, through a window into a wrong apartment. He's not the one that killed Breonna Taylor, apparently, as the facts get kind of broken out. He did shoot into the wrong apartment, and I think that's kind of worse. So think about yourselves in your house, and someone's pounding on your door, and you don't live in that great of a neighborhood, and you have the right to defend yourself, and you have a legally owned firearm. What would you do? I'd like to think that who knows, right? That's a scary situation. Nobody wants to be there, and I don't want anybody there in that situation, period. That's the argument against no-knock raids. That's the argument against late night raids. I don't want people on either side of that particular door trying to, no matter what, the end result is a possible train wreck, right? So the real bad guy, the real drug seller was already in jail. Whatever we want to think about Breonna Taylor, I think that's open to debate. But what happens is the left carries the torch as a banner of racism and causes us to say, well, is that really racism? Was this really a racist situation? Was this an example of systemic racism? And if it was, it's not particularly the police on the front line that are the systemic racists. It's the system itself that creates these situations where police and judges and laws all back up the notion that go into someone's apartment at 1 o'clock in the morning, when it's possible that there is especially in Kentucky, because there is the castle doctrine, you have the right to defend yourself, and especially with legally owned firearms, and the firearm that was used by Breonna Taylor's boyfriend was legally owned. He also is facing no charges. All charges against him have been dropped. He is not going to be prosecuted. What he did was a reasonable response to a terrifying situation that the police didn't expect him to be there. That's the bottom line. And we've talked about ending qualified immunity in the past. I think that occasionally my police friends get upset with that concept, or police get upset with that concept. Ending qualified immunity is a broader concept than just the police, though. Okay. So if we lift qualified immunity, it will bring us better governance almost automatically at all levels of governance, judges, bureaucrats, tax assessors. None of them can be sued if they have a reasonable expectation that they're doing their job in an appropriate fashion and that they can provide that. So even if it looks malicious, even if they damage you, even if that it seems like they hurt you, as long as they can present the case that they had a reasonable right to do what they did, they can't be sued and they can't be prosecuted. And ending qualified immunity puts them, especially when we look at the abuses in the family court system, the fact that perjury isn't a crime, that fathers go without seeing their kids for months and weeks on false accusations, and nothing, guys, comes out of those situations. And moms too, okay? Perjurers, people that are willing to perjure themselves, that's not a gender-based thing. That's a real-based thing. They'll go in, they'll lie, and they'll gain an advantage. And then as it becomes apparent that that person lied, okay, there's no prosecution for that person. So as we expand that notion, we're expanding the Breonna Taylor notion. That's what ending qualified immunity can do. It can automatically improve governance on several levels. And the drug war, that's the system, right? The system itself creates situations that put human beings in danger. There was a police officer injured and Breonna Taylor lost her life. Okay. Both of those things are not optimal outcomes. Both of those things are inappropriate. The other people who were arrested during the day, the real drug dealers, the real people that have committed violence in the past, were arrested during the day based on evidence that the warrant presented to the police officers. That is more important. The end result of this raid was one person lost their life, a cop lost his job and got convicted, or no, I'm sorry, got charges brought against him, and another cop got injured. Okay, so the system itself is what's to blame here. And one of the things about ending the drug war, and Ryan, let me just expand on it, right? Because people don't understand when libertarians are talking about ending the drug war, treatment for people using drugs is more important than prosecution of people that are using drugs, especially a small, low-level people who have small amounts of product on them. Also, the fact that it's so illegal and yet so many people want to do drugs increases the profitability of doing those drugs. So if they can find a route, an avenue, a pathway around the police, even for a short period of time, they make incredible profits. So ending the drug war, that's one of the things we're talking about when we're talking about ending the drug war. Decriminalizing, at the very least, many, many aspects of how people are prosecuted and how they are treated. And upping our treatment programs and upping the notion that you can get treated if you're feeling addicted to a drug without fear of prosecution. And that's something that may, in fact, if people can get treatment, okay, that may, in fact, lower drug use as a result, as it becomes less criminalized, as we stop filling up our prisons with children who want to change their economic future. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about ending the drug war. It's making better governance that benefits our communities, our young people, and our economically desperate young people, which in central New York and upstate New York, I don't think we get that quite as well as people that live in urban areas get. I'll be perfectly honest with you. Right. So I've read so much on this, and guess what? The more I read, the more confusing I got. There's a wormhole in the way that this story was reported. It's been inaccurately reported on several different levels. Okay, and to sell advertising for newspapers and to sell clicks on social media, the reporting on this story, there's not one clearly delineated, this is what happened precisely. So there was the police knocked, according to one person that was there. Now, and we know that things even get political in these situations. 11 people said that the police didn't knock, and the guy that was inside the house, and Breonna Taylor's boyfriend's name, her real boyfriend, not her former boyfriend, and you guys know sometimes things slip out of my head. His name has slipped out of my head right now. So he said that they didn't knock, or he fired in response to a commotion. And besides, guys, he's on the other side of a door. How is he even supposed to know that it's the police at 1 o'clock in the morning? This guy was a law-abiding citizen, never been in trouble, owned a legally owned firearm, lived in a rough neighborhood, knew Breonna's history, knew that those guys that those people that Breonna had been associated with had been in trouble for drugs in the past. Why wouldn't this guy have heightened his self-defense brain pattern, right? You would be thinking, I'm not even sure I want to be here, man. Good thing I brought my gun. Boom, boom, boom on the door. That's the cops. Do you know it's the cops? Yeah, Shelly, that's my nephew lost his life. I think that guy losing his job isn't so important. It's not as important. You're right. It's not as important. And your nephew that lost his life was serving as a police officer, and I can't remember where, but it's an important story. And I keep telling you, we got to have a conversation about that. But I've been incredibly and not too busy to not think about the story. Don't get me wrong, to think about your situation. I've been too busy to reach out to you to get the details, and I know that's on me. But not to not know that it's important, to not understand that you're important and that story is important, and that there are two sides to the story. Even if you are a libertarian, I don't care. There's two sides to the story about the cops and the robbers. Okay, guys, period. And the problem is the system. The warrants don't come from the police. They come from the investigators. They go to a judge. Then they go back to the police. Yes, that is absolutely correct. There's a whole system involved, and they are desperate in certain areas to rid communities of drug dealers who are profiting off this disgust, this malaise, and this economic trap that these people are in. And they are anxious to get rid of that. And drugs can be a real problem because they are really addictive. And there is a real amount of power that goes along with being the person that's willing to deal drugs. That if we change the system, we can alleviate that power. And that's what libertarians are talking about. We don't want people on the opposite sides of a door ready to go to war in the dead of night. We don't want that. And whatever it takes to stop that, I'm willing to fight for that on whatever level I can. If I don't win this election, I will fight for it on this level. If I do win this election, I will fight for it on the state level, guys. And I'm not kidding. I don't want people on either side of that door with guns fighting over a revenue stream. And there's other evils that go along with addictive drugs, guys. You all know that. And somehow we've got to find a better balance. We're not even close to a proper balance. Ending qualified immunity would encourage good cops to help alleviate the problem with bad seeds, and there are bad seeds. And guys, you know what? To be honest, the guy that shot through that window could be a bad seed, could be just a young kid that panicked, just thought his buddies were going to go down. Like, think about that. It's dark out. Like, you're amped up. You're in an area purported to be a drug-filled area. You're going after. Potentially, you don't know who you're going after. You're going after, if Breonna's linked in with the bad drug dealers, potentially you're going after another bad drug dealer. Like, she wasn't linked in as being a total kind of, murdering thug drug dealer. She was linked in as being an accomplice in having drugs shipped to her house. Now, they didn't find any drugs, and I think that's pretty important. Okay. I think they didn't find any piles of cash. So her ex-boyfriend in jail could be, guys, how do we trust that guy? And how do we write a warrant on what that guy said? And I think that's if I've read the stories correctly, I think that's how it played out. Any qualified immunity would raise good cops up and whittle away bad seeds. I agree with that. And then having a liability policy to protect them from getting sued. A bad cop's liability, like a bad contractor's liability insurance, goes up. It's the same kind of concept. And yes, the community should pay for that, right? They should accept the amount of policing that they want, and they should pay for the police officers. And the communities, especially in urban areas, need to have input on their policing. And I think that's one of the issues that's missing. And I think that's one of the issues where in rural New York, we don't understand when we see the defund the police. And not that we should understand it, because it's another wormhole. It's said wrong. It's not exactly what people are talking about. They want community policing. They want it structured in a way that they feel benefits their community. And guess what? They're paying taxes. If they're renting an apartment in that neighborhood, they're paying taxes in that neighborhood. They should have some input on how they are policed, period. Yes, I knew what you meant, but professionals carry liability, and so if the government wants to appear professional, they wouldn't have an issue with it. That's pretty funny. On the issue of liability insurance, guys, and I don't like talking about the wormholes at the national level about the Trump, the Strokes, the Russian investigation, but this is pretty funny. Today or yesterday, it came out that several of the investigators that were participating in the whole Carter Page, Russian, Ukraine election interference that they're trying to pin on Trump and the bizarreness of all of that. Some of those people were so uncomfortable with the investigation that they went out and got liability insurance for what was about to happen, for the shit that was about to go down, that they were deliberately investigating based on anti-Trump biases. And so they went out and bought liability policies. So professionals can buy liability policies. And so that's an interesting point. It can be done. Now, and again, like I like that idea of police officers of ending qualified immunity, but providing our police officers, our fire people, our first responders with real liability insurance, that they if they're doing things in the community's best interest and something happens that we now they get sued for, that they have automatic protection. I do want that. Yes. Yeah. Again, you read this Breonna Taylor story, and you read about you catch a wind of a drug that's way better than methadone at helping people treat addiction. Okay, but it's not available in the United States. Okay, and you're like, well, why isn't it available in the United States? And we all know, because one company has bought regulations to enrich, and a politician has sold regulations to maintain his seat on some sort of planning commission or board or whatever they're called up at the national level. And so, so methadone's a drug of choice because they bought laws and rules that methadone's a drug of choice to treat addiction. So, I envision a world where we can do better with this drug war, that we declared a war on poverty. The only country in the world where poverty is maintained or stayed about the same or grown a little bit is the U.S. The rest of the world, because of capitalism and spreading the word of capitalism, poverty has decreased. Okay. And so we have a war on poverty. We have a war on drugs. Drugs are more prevalent and more expensive and more profitable for drug dealers to sell. So these things that we call wars are complete failures. This big government action, or if we don't concentrate on treating the individual and helping the individual, really, really helping the individual with not from top down kind of styles and prescriptive measures where we grow police departments and things like that, we're not going to be successful. We're going to continue on this track that we're on. Thank you. North Carolina. Yes. Albany County Sheriff Craig Apple has switched a wing of the county jail into a rehab center. That is a good start, and especially with this government response to COVID, right? Our rehab centers are going to be pretty popular for the next couple of years. People have lost their jobs. Our unemployment rate in New York is through the roof. Small businesses are packing up and leaving. People have been devastated, because we haven't even begun to feel the complete impact, guys. Like, people that own property, multiple pieces of property that were successful renters, they're going to leave the state. They're gone. They're going to take whatever money they have saved. They're going to try to get whatever they can for their properties, and they're going to take off. And if they don't get that, they're going to just turn it over to their county or their town or whatever, and they're gone. They're not coming back. The government response to COVID, the ending evictions, these things, and I guess we all get this. We need to be sympathetic, and we need answers. But every time we come up with an answer, but in New York, it chases people away, it seems like. Gave up training first responders because we weren't allowed to carry liability insurance. I've heard stories like that. I think that's a strange system. And again, that just highlights the things that we're talking about, right? That the rules of engagement, the rules that we have of, you could be sued for someone performing badly, but they can't be sued because you're not a government employee and they are. I'm imagining that's a situation that's a real problem. Sympathy doesn't excuse stupidity. Yeah, no, it never does, and it shouldn't. Not exactly sure which thing we're referring to there. I talk so fast and I forget, but yeah, no, sympathy doesn't excuse stupidity. And if we want to, hopefully we're talking about basically the systems that we have in place are stupid, and that people inside those systems make stupid decisions, and yeah, and people that use drugs make stupid decisions. If that's what we're going to, they do. People that use a lot of drugs are making poor decisions about their own health. That's absolutely true. Um, so, guys, what else you got for me tonight? Remember, the likes, the comments, the shares, they're incredibly important. I want to give a shout out to Dakota Finch, my buddy out towards Marathon, out towards Cortland. As you guys might have seen, I changed my cover photo on my page, and it was based on Dakota doing some work for me, just offering me some support. It's got a few of his cows and a big sign for write-in Tim O'Connor for New York State Senate District 51. And guys, I think if we want to have impact, I think that basically, let me be clear too. I want to be clear that I legitimately got the required number of signatures to do the job to get my name on the ballot in Senate District 51. Now, they have rules. The New York State Board of Elections has laws to prevent what they would call election fraud, right? If you hire a petitioner and he can go around and collect signatures on petitions for you, like say they pay him $5 a line, there's a big incentive for that guy to sit at his desk, fake a bunch of signatures, and then put his own signature at the bottom of each page. And he can make way more money per hour than walking around actually collecting signatures from people to get a person on the ballot. So none of that I did. I circulated my own petitions. The only petition of mine that wasn't signed by me was signed at the Otsego County Libertarian Party meeting. And that was signed by the vice chair, Wilson Wells. And so besides him, the only other witness to my petitions was me. They, based on this ridiculous prevention of fraud, invalidated my signature as a witness on my petitions. It's cheesy, two-party, bipartisan garbage. All right. There's no other way to describe it. It's cheap, it's deliberate, and it's voter suppression. Okay. Like, period. All right. Even if I was on there, people aren't ready necessarily in Central New York to elect someone that's a libertarian, and that's fine. But if my name was on the ballot, it would be easier to raise money. It would be easier to communicate to you, and it would be easier to run an effective campaign. So they knew that. And so basically they take a cheesy technicality and they rejected my petitions. And the bottom line is, guys, I fought it as hard as I could. I went to them, tried to rectify the situation. I followed through on all the appeals. And then it came down to that crunch time, that moment of, do you want to spend $4,000 to go to court with someone that doesn't understand election law? And that was a pretty scary deal, because where does 4,000, 5,000, what does that turn into if the case goes on and on? It could turn into an infinite amount of money that I don't have. All right. The system using sympathy to explain bad government. Yes. Okay. Yes. Correct. Okay. That's what I was hoping you were going for, but you never know. And guys, yeah, sympathy to explain bad government decisions. That is one of the things they signal virtue, right? The government even makes laws to signal the legislators' virtue. And those things all cost us money, and they cost us freedom. And we don't seem to be able to push back on that, because they say something, everybody goes, oh my God, that sounds great. And then they make a law, and then that law, I don't know, you can no longer park your car in the street or something. It's craziness. The system just uses sympathy to take advantage. Yes, I agree. And we are as human beings all sympathetic for each other anyway. There was something I wanted to. Oh, Jo Jorgensen, guys. Guys, as a libertarian, I've been very honest. I don't dislike Trump. I think he's hilarious. I think he does do, regardless of whether he's a real libertarian or not. None of us are real libertarians, and he is definitely not a real libertarian. He is a populist that spends a lot of money, but he also does do things that no other president would do. All right. Period. He is not as huge of a swamp creature as the rest of the guys, and that's fine. So, suspending the import ban on drugs from Canada certainly has lowered everybody's prescription drugs. And as you get older, you're going to end up on a prescription drug. That's the bottom line. And that is what's going to happen. So doing that was a real shot at the swamp. And I don't know if people understand how big of a shot at the swamp that was. But let's get back to Jo Jorgensen. She named her potential Supreme Court nominee list. And I just want to point out that back on June 25th, I interviewed Jim Ostrowki because I knew that he was going to sue Andrew Cuomo and the state of New York and several Letitia James. And I believe they sued the chief of the director of the New York State Police for illegal enforcement and illegally, unconstitutionally locking down New York State, and has several plaintiffs involved in that. So Jim Ostrowki and I did an hour-long interview, and guys, the comments were great. People loved them. We got something like 700, 800 views back when, like that was unheard of. It was epic. So basically, Jo Jorgensen named him, Jim Ostrowki, to her list of potential Supreme Court nominations. I think that's wonderful. I think that her being aware of a guy like Jim and helps us be aware of her. So as a libertarian, I'm voting for Jo Jorgensen. I'm committed to building a third-party system. I get it if you guys don't agree with that you don't think that's the way you've got to go. If you want to vote for Biden, I understand. If you want to vote for Trump, I understand. A vote for Jo Jorgensen in New York does a lot of good for New York third-party systems. And that's even part of what I'm focusing on. But I do like a lot of her platforms. I do like a lot of her presentations. I do like her activity on social media. And libertarians have to do a lot on social media because it's a way to reach out to people, get inside their heads, and talk with them and have these conversations. That conversations can save the world. They're a cure for Munchausen's. They're a cure for PTSD. Conversation therapy can cure both Munchausen's, post-traumatic stress disorder, and Stockholm syndrome. And now those are the treatments for it. And so I think having conversations like this is incredibly important for society. And I'm glad that I have people that join me that like this podcast, broadcast, and participate, guys, because it helps me too. Yes. All right. We had this in Greene County Sheriff's Office. The winner disqualified all the signatures of his opponent. The ruling came down that only one signature was written by a husband for the wife. The ruling came down 2 days before the election, and the media didn't cover it. Yeah, the media, and I'm not the only one to say this, and a lot of people will say it, and I guess even there's agents of the media that will admit it, okay? One of the issues when it comes to the media is that they are way more likely to cover a candidate that's buying advertising in their paper. It's a simple fact, okay? So let's say 10 years ago, there was a contractor, relatively big contractor, didn't have any of the right insurances, who was going around and taking deposits and not getting there, never doing the work. And as a contractor, that's not a game that I ever played. When I first started, I would take a small deposit. And then as I got a little bit bigger, I wouldn't take any deposits till I got to the job. And then if they didn't have a deposit check there waiting for me that day, then I may not stay. It would depend on how comfortable I felt. But you are not supposed to be taking money without a formal contract, and then that money's supposed to go in escrow. And a lot of you guys probably know a little bit about that because I know there's other contractors that watch this. So basically, this guy was going around taking money and blah, blah, blah. So I was advertising with the paper. Guess who the paper calls for an interview, right? I'm like right at the top of their list. They interview 3 contractors, all the contractors that were in the story that had a similar story to mine about. And we weren't trying to bash this guy, but it's a simple fact that you can't take money. It's stealing, especially if you don't get there and do the job. You stole the money, period. So the 3 contractors that they interviewed were guys that advertised with the paper. And it was, let's report a story, but let's also offer our guys that advertise with us coverage. It's real, okay? It's real. And I'm not saying that our local newspapers don't occasionally provide us with real news. They do. Our local newspaper in Oneonta seems to just concentrate on crafting opinion articles to drive people crazy on Facebook. But okay, I don't always get that. I don't understand it. Got that. Yeah, the media didn't cover because there's no money in it for them. I don't blame you for not being sympathetic to Jets fans. I am not sympathetic to Jets fans either. And my oldest daughter, my 28-year-old living in Virginia, is a Jets fan. So I just love it. I want them to go 0-16. I don't even know if they're going to have 16 games, but I want them to lose every game this year. That would make me so happy. They play in New Jersey, brother. They literally are the New Jersey Jets. No one should be sympathetic to the Jets fans. That's the thing, right? We can't we have this notion that we can just at will or at whim go to the courts and demand justice, and it just is way more complicated than that. He should have gotten sued lots of times. We would like to get over that 5%, somewhere around 160,000 votes, I think. In New York State, we need to maintain ballot access, and that's important. And Jo Jorgensen is our best ticket for that. We are a different generation than now. There's a generation, right? There's our generation. We're like Gen Xers, I imagine, or you guys might be millennials, but I don't think so. You guys are probably Gen Xers. I'm like the first year the Gen Xers came out, or the second year Gen Xers came out. You guys are probably towards the back end of Gen Xers. Now we go through the millennials, and even the millennials are waking up. But we get down to the Gen Zers. Both of my kids, these Gen Zers, one of them is like radical conservative libertarian, and the other one's a radical liberal libertarian. I'm not even kidding. Like, they like Spike Cohen, they like Jo Jorgensen, they like talking about how much less government would be better. And these are the kids that are going through the school systems that we're talking about, are indoctrinating our youth at they come home with political ideas that they want to talk about and force down my throat. And I'm just like, and then we have a real conversation about politics. And they're like, oh. And then I had my 16-year-old actually listen to Spike. And she's just like, that guy's really cool and he's really smart. And I love what he's saying. So it's very funny. 5% doesn't exist for blue collar. We got to vote gold and then it exists. Yes, 5% of the national vote. Oh, isn't it? Yeah, that's right. I do find that to be a funny libertarian goal, Ryan, and I hope you're with me on it, man, because I'm not knocking it, but we're literally libertarians trying to get federal funding for the party. What? But okay. And look, I just find humor in it, but it is how the game is played. And so it will certainly allow us to advertise and grow our party much more effectively. And I think that would be fantastic. That would be a huge bonus. And it is how the game is played. And that money is out there. And if we get 5%, getting that funding, that can lead to exponential growth, right? Right now we see a little bit of geometric growth where it's like 1%, 2%, 5%. The numbers are getting a little bit bigger. Now, if it continues on that path, it's like save a penny a day and double it every day for a month, and you have like $68,000. It's that kind of concept. We're seeing the growth of that, the beginning of that. So if we hit our 5% this year, or I think it would be like 6% would get us the exponential growth, that would be a lot of fun. It would be epic. Yes, not much news anymore. All commentary everywhere you look. Everywhere you look. I saw a meme. I posted it on my Facebook page, guys. A meme that a panel of experts want to talk about COVID in school, and they want to talk about the possibility, see, I'm using P's, about the letters B and P being a danger to spreading COVID. Do you want me to say that again? A panel of experts on a news show on Fox News wants to talk about the dangers of singing happy birthday in school because it could spread COVID. Bro, we got to do better than this, man. That's why I'm saying, even if you don't like me, listen to my podcast. Even if you like listen to other podcasts, do it. What this mind-numbing bunch of stuff that's coming out of the TV, they're desperate. You're seeing a desperate media dying. I hope it's gasping its last breaths. I hope everything ends up on the internet and that yokels like me figure out a way to make some money and make a living at it, unless I get elected to New York State Senate. And then what you'll be hearing about is how these jokers are voting and crapping all over us and not even literally selling less. Did you guys see how that day $500 what was it, that shampooing permit license, and how they were going to have to spend $11,000 worth of schooling, and the person that proposed that law actually owned schools that were in the system of providing that kind of education? I mean, what a clown show. That is how politics is done. That's real. They're usually better at hiding that than that, but yeah, Real news in newspapers and found in the gardening and entertainment. Yeah, and the high school sports section, those guys do a great job. You know, when I occasionally see my kid in there when he does something good in a baseball game or a wrestling match or something like that, like, yeah, that's where the real news is. That's the only news. The rest of it is borrowed from AP or Gannett news services, the main articles, and then the conjecture-based articles are, and then the happy news, the local events and stuff like that. All that stuff's positive. But then you get into the guest commentaries and in the paper's opinion, and guys, how is it that every single newspaper, invariably, the paper's opinion is this ridiculously emotive, liberal, progressive pile of blick? I don't even know. Like, it's literally, it's mind-numbing to me. Why are you a Giants fan, Andrew? They play in New Jersey too. They literally moved to New Jersey to save on taxes, man. I'm a boomer. Well, that's okay. Boomers got to be out there, and just like in the millennial generation, there can be cool boomers. I swear to God, they can be okay. They're not all a bunch of progressive crazies. From 18, yes, and thank you for bringing this up, because I definitely wanted to hit on this subject specifically. Okay, the younger generations, the millennials, the Gen Zers that are coming out to vote now, and guys like us in Gen X, we wanted a third party. I didn't realize that I wanted a real third party until I tried to kind of participate in the conservative party and realized that it wasn't a real third party, and that it was basically just an extension of the Republican Party, and that didn't get better over time, that there was a promise that was going to get better, and it didn't. And also, then the neocons came out and were talking about how we needed to be the world's police force, and we needed to be social workers with guns in foreign countries. We needed to send children and expend their blood on foreign soil to make sure that revenue centers grow. And this is all the time. We had oil in the ground then. Did we really need to go protect Saudi Arabia's oil fields ever? Do we ever really need to protect the free flow of oil at market prices? Did we ever really need to do that? We've always had energy. And if we use up oil and we don't do business with those guys, it only hastens an energy revolution where we can't use those things. And I'm okay with that. You're not. We've got hope, Andrew, right? I regret to say that my generation, Generation Y, Generation Z are being brainwashed. They are deliberately trying to brainwash you, but you're not brainwashed. Even some of the people that are associated in our area with the left side of the spectrum are not completely brainwashed. You can talk to them about rational economic policy, and they seem to listen, and that's okay. What do? They put masks over the end of their French horn, I guess. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know what they're going to do. Maybe they won't have music class until November 4th. Get it? Yeah, I saw this exchange. That's what I was talking about. And I don't know if you missed it earlier. I thanked Rand Paul once again for offering New York State representation on the floor of the Senate, where it is getting none and has not gotten any for decades. We have Chuck Schumer, who, guys, it's time for the guy to retire. I think we all know that. He probably will soon, and he should. And I think they learned a lesson, like Ruth Bader Ginsburg should have retired when Obama was president. Because now we're in a situation where Trump gets another nomination, and if he nominates a constitutionalist and a constructionalist, I'm gonna be okay with that. And if the Democrats put on a clown show like they did against Kavanaugh, I think that they hurt themselves with that. I'm not going to lie. I don't think that helped them. I think that hurt their credibility. I don't know if he actually even had a stroke. I watched the video. It went sideways for him. Dr. Ron is a great voice for liberty. He certainly helped grow the Mises Caucus and the libertarian concepts that I find appealing. That the government is the problem, that we need to localize. Those are things that Dr. Ron Paul contributed to. Second Amendment rights. Support Larry Sharpe promoting New York libertarians a sharp way. Sharp for New York 22. Yes. I think that Larry let's have a little throwdown about Larry, Ryan, because I think that Larry is a great advocate for liberty in New York. He breached, I followed. He opened up the idea that a guy who's determined with willpower and love for his community can have an impact on liberty. I want him, but this is his decision, right? So how do we convince him to run for New York in 2022? How do we convince him to do that? How do we explain to him that that is in the best interest of the state? We have to grow the party. We have to get people to show up at his events. We have to get people to show up at his shows. Help them get there, because once we get them there, he keeps them. He brings them back, and that's great. And I have a great bunch of friends, a great bunch of conservative friends. They got a taste of the duopoly, and I'm hoping that they move towards liberty. And I think no matter what, they are liberty minded. That's the bottom line, and they are prepared to do the hard work to move us in a direction away from Cuomo. Ryan Bedford, how many states have I been in the last 10 months? Don't believe COVID. Also have been converted. Tim O'Connor, my vote is yes. Thank you, Frank. I appreciate that. That's important. That's the issue. Is COVID real? I have to believe it's real on some level. Is it dangerous? Is it? Yes. Is it dangerous to me? More dangerous than it is to you, Frank, but I don't feel particularly threatened by that. I don't feel threatened by COVID. It's almost not dangerous at all for my kids. Yes, because it's the way that we do it. Yes. More people on the NYPD than I says, yeah, 40,000, 50,000 people work for NYPD. They all on some level contribute to the economy in New York City. I don't love the defund the police is just one more horrible buzzword. It's like how the left took up the torch for Breonna Taylor, guys. And you guys know, like, I don't want to beat up on people that are Democrats in the Democratic Party that understand that liberty and individual rights are completely important. But they also can't deny that their campaign strategy is one based on emotion, one based on anti-ism, and one based on deliberately trying to stimulate everyone's id and invoke this fight or flight mentality. They do it constantly. And that's something I want to say. I don't know if I covered it, but I think it, even if I did cover it, I'm willing to cover it again. The notion that because Breonna Taylor because the left and the progressive took up the torch for Breonna Taylor and aren't crafting solutions and are talking about revamping the no-knock warrant system, and that does not mean, number one, that Breonna Taylor was automatically a bad person. Number two, it does not mean just because the progressive took it up. First of all, the last thing I want them to do is revamp anything. The goal would be to do away with something. The goal would be to make something better. The goal of revamping it sounds like they'll turn it into a war on no-knock warrants, which means there will be more no-knock warrants and they will be enforced on everybody equally, right? They'll just keep score. Like, well, we haven't done, based on population, only on New York needs 87 no-knock warrants because we did 375 in New York City. So let's get the no-knock warrants things rolling. That's how they keep score. That's how progressive roll. That's how they grow government. I'm trying to be like exaggerate and reduce the argument to the absurd, but that's how they operate, right? That's how they keep score. My dad was the chair of the Conservative Party and ran on a Democratic ticket hoping to lose. All to point out excessive spending. Old school conservatives are much like libertarians. They are. What happened is neocons infiltrated, and neocons are war hawks, man. They want our guys on foreign soil. They want American dominion overseas. They buy into this new world order kind of thing, and they want America to be the police force for the world. And that they think that would be a great role, that would place Americans. There's probably some, but they would place America at the top of the rung of the new world order. Not necessarily Americans, but the American political hierarchy. And so old school conservatives are a lot like libertarians, and that's what I'm hoping some of my Republican fans realize that they're actually conservatives and that they are actually libertarians, but that's up to them, and I respect whoever they vote for. You guys know that. That's how. If they put some thought into it, they put some effort into it, they can vote for whoever they want, and they have my respect. I promise that today. I promise that tomorrow, and I promise that forever in the future. Period. Yes, fake. Honestly, I've been doing a little bit of work on Twitter, and a bunch of Democrats were saying, "Well, who's our worst senator?" And Nancy Pelosi was right at the top of the list. It was I was just like, as a libertarian, I'm glad I don't have to make those decisions. Chuck is a schmuck. And Robert Forrest, how are you, brother? Thank you for being here. Robert Forrest and Robert Forrest's Situation. Save the Forest Farm, guys. Period. Those are the things that, as a state senator, I'm going to talk to the communities in Senate District 51 and explain to them that what happened to Robert and any facsimile of what happened to Robert, and we have several cases of it in this area, they need to stop. It treats people like awful. It disrespects everybody, and we lose members of our community, and we chase them out of the state. Period. Imagine if you will, a virus so dangerous you must be tested to know if you had it. I should practice that. That might work. We might be able to add that to the RC Cola riff. We get out there. Imagine, if you will, a virus so dangerous you must be tested to know if you had it. I have to work on it. But yeah, that's great, Ryan. As always, you're a wordsmith, brother. I noticed your sign in back of you. I remember seeing the same sign while I was in building trade students in BOCES of 2013. If it's welded, obviously I didn't make it. But if it's from building trades, I might have. Okay, the sign in the back of me. All right. So as Bedford might tell you, as any contractor will tell you, you hit generally mud season. Early March, late February sometimes. Yes. Neocons are it never trusted the military industrial complex, brother. That's for sure. And that is where neocons come from. But getting back to the sign, okay. Basically, you come up with ideas that you can do inside. If you don't have a job inside, you come up with ideas to do inside. So me and my buddy Joe Keto, former paratrooper, we got together this past spring and we made some things. We made some concrete things. So that sign behind me is actually, believe it or not, concrete. So what I did was I had an old barber chair from the 1900s, and that's like the footrest on the old barber chair, the hydraulic. This is back when they were just figuring out industrial revolution and the use of hydraulics and how they could make them small enough to lift a human being up for a barber to cut his hair. So in a way, there's a story behind it. Okay, so I took this old thing here. I'll show that to you too. I might as well come. We're heading down to the end of time, but let me tell you the whole story. All right, so this I took and made a mold out of, right? Then I needed a negative relief. So I took that, made this negative relief, and poured concrete into it. All right. And then basically it was going to be a tabletop, but I loved the way that it came out because I just wanted it to look like an old beat up workbench, right? So I freaking took some tools and I spray painted them on there and I rubbed some rust into it. You can see an outline of a tool right there. Okay. So basically I just and everything just faded in perfectly and it just came out great. And I had a blast making it. And so I wanted to show it off. And I called it contractor mess around season in the past. And that's things that we do. And I've got a few other little projects like that I've done around my house just for the fun of it. And they look really great on video cams. Guys, I've actually been doing this for 53 minutes. I can't even believe it. Don't let the left's co-opting of the Breonna Taylor story drive you away from your humanity and her humanity. All right. She probably was a flawed individual. Also, guys, Garrett Dumaine had an article, guest commentary printed in the Oneonta Daily Star. He's one of the founding members, one of the directors of the Otsego County Second Amendment Sanctuary. He wrote an excellent guest commentary about the appropriateness of the Second Amendment and why we need to be more concerned about gun ownership, why gun ownership is important, why it's important to think about Otsego County as a Second Amendment sanctuary and what we can do to further that concept. And guys, you can like the NRA, but I'm telling you right now, if you want to spend money with Otsego County Second Amendment Sanctuary, spend money with NY2A NYS. That's Jim Ostrowski, Dwayne Whitmer, and Steve Filano. Those guys are all involved heavily in that program. It's from Western New York. They've done some of the work to convince their local sheriffs that prosecuting red flag laws is completely inappropriate. And Generino, I know I see you there. How you doing, brother? Don't worry about it. I've been going for an hour. You can always rewind it and check it out. I'm glad that you're here. I appreciate you are here. I know you and I were thoughtful about Larry Sharpe back in the day. I'm glad you're showing up and offering me some discussion. We were just talking about 2A NYS, and that group is out your way. I know that you're out towards Rochester, okay? And I think that would be maybe something you're interested in working with. I probably won't go live again until at least Monday. And on Monday, I'm doing a show with a kid on YouTube. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm not sure if I could broadcast it to my Senate page, but I might try it. Okay, good. Great bunch of guys. I've talked to Rick face to face. I like Rick a lot. I would love to talk to Rick face to face on this show. I believe that I offered it to him. I don't think that he was quite comfortable with the concept. Rick is, in fact, a Republican. He sees value in the Republican Party, and I don't blame him. That's his decision. I don't believe that moving forward in the future, I think we're going to come to a realization that there are individuals that believe in liberty and individuals that love the state. And I think that down the road, over the course of the next few years, we're going to see a big shift, okay, into the Libertarian Party as the party that clearly does not think that signaling virtue and legislating virtue is the appropriate way to go, that we craft solutions, that we take a look at the laws in New York State and we say, look, why aren't our new nuclear regulations written with nuclear scientists? Why are they from the 1970s? And why haven't we explored what Generation 4 nuclear power is? Why are we building 700-foot tall windmills in small communities and offering them pilot programs to destroy the quality of life in a small community? Why are we doing that when we have real science out there that can offer real opportunity, redundant electric grids with no risk? And I'm not saying no risk. We need to do the research. We need to know for sure. But there is a next generation, a Generation 4 nuclear power using thorium where the waste product is nil. It lasts 300 years. Okay, you're familiar with 2A NYS. So, guys, we have real solutions. We have real ideas. It's going to take voting for me. It's going to take guts. It's going to take giving guys like me money so that we can get yard signs or pens or even travel around the communities and talk to people. So those things got to happen. If you can help me out with any of that, great. If you can't help me out with that, you can share this to your page. You can have people who have questions about who I am. You can direct them to my page, and through that, you can direct them to me. They will talk to me. I will answer any questions that come through to me through my page. I will. I promise. I do it all the time. Thank you, Levi. I appreciate you being here. You know that, brother. Didn't get to see you last weekend. Maybe we'll see you sometime soon, though. I gotta be relatively sober and offer you a beating at cornhole. You probably haven't had one in a while. So anyways, guys, yes, gen4nuclear.com. Check that out. See if it's serious for you. It's serious for me. It's a solution. Moving forward, we need to have real science, not purchase legislation that's decades old, purchased by the existing nuclear industry, and which is basically a state-run monopoly anyway. And we have ways to move forward, all right? If burning fossil fuels is bad for the environment, let's move forward, all right? Let's move forward really, okay? Let's not pilot programs for big, huge windmills that no money goes to benefit the community directly. And no money goes back to the members of the community to save them money on their taxes. That's not happening. That government doesn't. That's a mindset of government. We've got to change that. That's one of the things I'm willing to work on. Might need votes. Gen 4, it can't be weaponized. There's no waste. Like I think a thorium reactor, the thorium in the reactor lasts 300 years. But again, that guy was popularizing the science behind the next level, next generation nuclear. So some real research on the government level with real scientists has to be done. It under guys like me, with Queter, with Larry Sharpe, that ball would get rolling. Okay, right now it's 15, 20 years out. We need to speed that time frame up. If it's feasible, I believe it is. It's got to be. Anyways, guys, 59 minutes. I had a blast. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to work on getting some more guests. I know I get boring and some of my guests are way cooler than me. So, but like I said, I've been kind of busy and kind of stressed. So yeah, look, we all like the concept of green energy. Conservatives like it, libertarians like it, and the left likes it. But we've got to do it. We've got to do it, and we've got to do it right. And sometimes windmills are, you can't blame towns for banning them, brother. You can't. A 700-foot tall windmill that's casting noise and light flickers and literally disrupting your life every day for money that doesn't go to you, that goes to your town under a payment in lieu of taxes. And guys, we got to talk about payments in lieu of taxes again, because I've talked about them before. They're a bizarre way of doing business, and they literally punish businesses that are already here. It's not fair to them. Businesses that have been in business for generations don't get pilot programs, and businesses that come here do. It's not tax equity. It doesn't encourage people to want to come here unless they get a pilot program. And what about that business that's been here for generations, guys, that have employed families, that have put kids through colleges with their families? What about them? Don't we care about them? Tax equity moving forward is hugely important. And I'm ranting now. I got to get off before I lose my mind. Anyways, guys, love you. I really do. I appreciate you being here. Remember to share it. Remember, if you can toss me a few bucks, toss me a few bucks. If you can't, just keep sharing it, keep showing up. That's what makes this fun for me, guys, and I appreciate it. However, our town borders Lake Ontario, and they thought about putting them offshore. Okay, to me that makes sense. Where you can choose to interact with the windmill, right? If it's far enough offshore, you could choose to interact with the windmill. It's not going to bother you. It's not casting shadow on your house. The low hum is far enough away from your house. Good night, John. Thank you, guys. All of you, thank you very much. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the views. I appreciate it. Let's all have a great weekend. I'm going to be spending time helping save the world with the LPNY convention, doing some hard work, having some tough conversations, crafting platforms, and hopefully not making enemies, making friends, but we'll see. I'm staking a claim on the Libertarian Party, and it's about freedom, and they're all about freedom. So I think we're going to come to fantastic agreements that are going to help this party move forward and grow rapidly. Good night, guys. Thank you, John. I appreciate it.